Guys, that rain is moving in, so we're getting ready to get wet. So I think it's cool how those clouds and rain's just pouring down over there on that ridge. Anyway, let's come over to piddle some, and the next series of videos is going to be, I think, Tales from the Bee Yard. But anyway, I was coming over to kind of set that up and do an intro on that, and not going to be able to get all that, but because she's heading our way. As you can tell now, you can't even see the ridge. Here we go. Alright gang, if you can tell, B-Dog got soaked. I was trying to do an intro for the next series of videos I intend to do. And well, it's not going to be a next series, it's going to be just a group of videos from here on out if I continue with the YouTube thing. But guys, I'm doing this for if some material I put on YouTube can help someone out, if it's just one person and I never hear from them in my life, then that's all I care about. I've thought on for many years on putting a video out on what I've been through and aspects of cancer and all, and I've had too many folks question me throughout my life and ask advice and things like that, not to try to share some stuff. But anyway, the dog got soaked, and big thunderstorm blew over the mountain, as you can see, and yeah, so that's what's happening here. Alright gang, we're back from the bee yard. B-Dog here with me, my pal. I don't think she's been feeling too good, guys. Yeah, she's been kind of a little sluggish recently, and I just don't think she's feeling too good. Hopefully that will reverse very quickly, but I don't know, she's getting a little up there in age, and I still take her most places I can, just to try to enjoy time together. I mean, she's spent a whole lot of time with this pup here over the last few years, dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway, back to what we were trying to do before we got rained out. If you can tell, my hat's soaking wet. The B-Dog's completely wet. But that storm blowing over the mountain was cool, though. You'll see it on the video there. But anyway, like I've told you before, and I'll say it in the audio portion of the video, what I'm doing here with these series of videos, and I'm thinking it's going to be called Tales from the Bee Yard or A Walk in the Bee Yard. What I intend on doing is maybe in the mornings sometimes, or evenings, depending on how I'm feeling physically with my back and all, I will try to go over and just tell some stories of some of the things I've dealt with in my life, and if it's something that can help someone, that's all I'm looking for. Had some folks in my life that's been diagnosed with cancers and stuff like that before, and they've called and wanted to talk, and man, I'm willing to talk to anybody. I mean, we all need that open ear from time to time, and when you're going through this stuff here, man, you can feel mighty alone, like there's no one you can talk to. And then dealing with your immediate family, especially like a spouse or significant other or what have you, it's really difficult talking to them because they're going through a whole nother aspect of how it's affecting them, and them seeing how it's affecting you, and vice versa, and it's their deal. They're contending with a whole lot of stuff too, and then you go through the trials and tribulations and the ups and downs dealing with a situation, like dealing with cancer. Not to mention throw on any issues that arise financially from your employer, because guys, let's face it, this is no walk in the park. If you're out of work for any extended period of time, these employers nowadays, they don't give a damn about you. I mean, I'm going to keep it real. They might lie to you at first and tell you that, hey, we'll try to work with you and this or that, but that's not the case. And in terms of my employer, there were some times there where I had some issues with them and their practices with trying to knock folks out of FMLA, but that's another story altogether. And we'll just leave that out of here. But anyway, I've questioned and tossed around. I've been mulling this over for over 10 years, whether or not to share this information with you guys. It's not easy for me at all. Matter of fact, I'm thinking about it, just deleting the material, because not that I really care what anyone thinks. All I'm trying to do is help someone. If I have one person, mission accomplished. Yeah, that's all I care about. Here's my story. When I was diagnosed, as much information as you think is out there, it's simply not. And as much support, you'll see the commercials, and you think you're going to have all the support, and it's not there. As far as I would think, if you're in a financial bind at the time, or a child maybe, when you're first diagnosed, that there might be some outlets and stuff. But here's the story with that, guys. If you have anything at all, you're not getting any treatment for free or comped or anything like that. But it's designed where they're going to take everything you got before you're able to get in, before you're able to qualify for any type of financial programs. And that's just the bottom line. I'm seeing it right now I've seen it with numerous people over the years, but I'm seeing it right now with a close family member. But, yeah, man, it's not pretty. But anyway, why I'm doing this to help people. Like I told you before, or said in the audio portion, I've wondered, hey, I know how sometimes your family members can be your worst critics, and they're like, why are you doing this and this and this? And frankly, I don't care. Them days are over with of worrying about what someone thinks. This is my race. I'm running it. You're not in my shoes, so if you got issue with what I do, cut the video off. I don't care. This is for the guy that was me over 10 years ago. Go to the doctor, get checked out. Your diagnosis and your life changes, and the questions I had at the time hopefully will be a lot of questions that a lot of other folks will have, and hopefully this will help you. Otherwise, if you don't care to watch the videos, and I'm sure the audio portion of this stuff is going to be boring, I might try to edit some pictures in or something to kind of help break it up. But, you don't need to be sitting here watching me talk, because yeah, I'm not crazy about that either. But anyway, so if you follow the channel with what I've been doing and done, and you support me, I'd like to thank you. Man, we're up to, I think, over 2,700 subscribers and have in excess of 500,000 views now. And actually, I think we're over 1 million views. Yeah, one video I think's over 550, and I think total channel's like 1.3 million or something. But yeah, it's nothing in terms of popularity on YouTube, and that's not why I do it. But I just, there's a multitude of reasons I do it. The main thing is to try to help people. This is the greatest platform it ever was. You don't have, at one point in time there wasn't all this manipulation and control in place, and limitations and challenging your freedoms and this type of thing, which we are all encountering on YouTube now. But yeah, it is, with all its flaws and cracking down on the guys like myself that are into firearms and stuff, which is ridiculous. I'm still hanging in there. It's still a great platform. Of course, I've been on went on another plane trajectory from a lot of the firearms stuff, which I still enjoy that stuff, and I always will, of course. I'm simply not able to shoot quite as much as I used to be able to due to physical reasons, back and stuff. But irregardless, still a big fan. Financial issues, I've had to sell a bunch of things. So irregardless, I'm doing this to help somebody. If you can gain a little bit of help from some of the stupid stuff I do, then that's great. I hope you enjoy it. If not, turn the channel. There's no need to voice why I'm such a reject or whatever with all, how all the trolls in YouTube world are. I mean, we already know that. There's no need to, jab it in there or send that home. But so be it. If it's negative, they say if it's negative, it's still positive in this facet. But it is what it is. I'm going to put this stuff out there. If you like it, thank you. If you don't, big deal, who cares? Alright guys, I'm going to try to set up this initial video/audio that I choose to share with you. Man, guys, you don't have to tell me. I know that I'm not a very good public speaker. Probably cover a lot of things numerous times, do a lot of rambling, get tongue-tied and twisted and all screwed up. That's just who I am. I'm sorry. I can do okay sometimes writing. Okay, speaking not so much. But anyway, I'm going to set this up. It's probably going to be pretty lengthy, but this first video/audio is going to cover primarily my first experience and at all in my life with cancer and coming to terms with understanding just what it is. And I remember when I was a kid, and you'll see in the audio part, when I was a kid, a man my father knew was dying from cancer, and I was probably 3 to 6 years old. But anyway, that was probably my first introduction to seeing how it affects your life. But anyhow, that's what this first video is going to cover, primarily my diagnosis, how it's the first time I realized really in my life what cancer was as a young child, and how it's a couple other facets in life where I've been exposed to it. Of course, my mother, she is a cancer survivor, and I've got some other numerous family members as well that's had it. Some's passed, some's beat it. We're all affected by it. I know a lot of times, even though that's the case, a lot of times you don't have very many avenues or outlets that you can look into. But anyway, this first little series here, just the video/audio, is going to be my first experience when I first discovered it. It's going to cover my mother's diagnosis, my diagnosis. I'll touch on just a touch of some minor things, with not going into any great detail, but things you might deal with. Let me know on these videos, guys, what exactly it is, questions you may have. If you want to ask me some questions, please feel free to. I'll try my best to answer stuff. But yeah, that's going to be the first part. Hope it can help you. And if it's not an issue in your life, if you're interested, please watch it. If not, it's going to be a lot of repetitious rambling. It's something that's very emotional, very hard to talk about. Like I've mentioned a few times before, and I will throughout the remainder of the series of videos, that this has been something that I've been mulling over to do for well in excess of 10 years. And I'm just now coming to terms with it, and I'm going to pull the trigger and do it, because I think I had someone call me the other day and they wanted to talk about this very thing, and it was some stuff he was going through. I'm like, I think I've got some experience in some facets that a lot of folks haven't dealt with, and maybe I can help someone if that's the case. Man, that's what I'm doing here. But anyway, that's the setup on that. I guess I'll start the audio portion from here. We'll have to see how the editing goes. Sorry for the rambling and the dragging. That's just kind of how it's going to be. I'm thinking all this is off the cuff, guys. And I thought about writing, sticking to some specific topics, writing it down, but I'm not going to read and sound robotic. I'm going to keep it real, man. And it's a very emotional thing that I've had to deal with in my life, and I'm sure it is for everyone else. I guess you'd be subhuman if it didn't affect you in any manner whatsoever. But this is kind of my story. If you like the videos, like I said, let me know. I'm never going to be in the comment, what do they say, the YouTube dudes, rate, comment, subscribe. I'm never going to be that guy. That's not me. If you like my stuff, holler at me. If you don't want to holler, that's fine. Whatever you want to do, guys. That's it. The views will dictate what everybody thinks. But, so, hope you enjoy. If this helps you, just send me a shout, whatnot. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Alright, this is going to be my series for YouTube entitled Thinking About a Walk in the Bee Yard. And I'll probably do a series of multitude of videos as long as I'm participating in YouTube. But thinking about a walk in the bee yard or bee yard conversations. Yeah, the first one's going to be entitled something along the lines of cancer conversations, perhaps, or whatever I'm able to think of as I'm doing it. How the ideas kind of come to you in certain moments of clarity or despair or highly stressful situations in your life can bring on moments of brilliance and genius that's been proven throughout history. But not to say this is anything like that. I've been struggling for a good number of years and making some videos and having some information on the subjects that I like to talk about. And this particular subject is being the subject of cancer and how cancer has impacted my life. These videos are not going to be for the casual YouTube viewer. It's not going to be for the trolls. It's not going to be for, the short attention span folks. At 30 seconds they're out if they're not seeing multi-million-dollar explosions or, the craziest high-flying acrobatics you've ever seen in your life. This is not for you. This is about real-life situations. Candid conversations they emit from my heart and soul. I've struggled for many years about making this series or even discussing it or talking about it. And one of the sad primary reasons in that is, I hate to even say it, but one of the sad reasons I've battled with making this series is feedback or negative feedback from friends and family. Because in this life, you're supposed to be, bulletproof, tough guy, not supposed to shed a tear. That's just kind of the way we're brought up in some respects. And a lot of that, I get it. A lot of that will get you through the tough times in life. But if you don't have a vivid perspective of the real, and you're not able to look inside with clarity
and to rationalize these tough challenges we face in this life, you're void of a lot of coping mechanisms and void of how of ways to deal with things. But anyway, I'm getting kind of off here. But anyhow, so walking the B yard. I'm planning on filming a lot of this in the B yard. A lot of it will probably result as those moments that just come to you, and I kind of view myself somewhat as I don't really know how I would say I view myself, but things are given to me in pieces, and whether it be musical or and believe me, I'm no musician by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something I enjoy. Um, Writing, I'm no writer. My grammar is horrible. Spelling, punctuation. I absolutely loathed school from probably the later middle school years and beyond. School was very challenging for me, I guess you'd say. Not challenging. Let's just say that I was focused on many other ventures at that time. Outdoors, hunting and fishing being primary. That focus turned into the typical things the younger generations do. Hanging out with your friends, camping out, partying down, and just having an overall good time. But the studies were certainly lacked at that point in my life. And, I think a lot of young guys my age at that point in their life, I think that's unfortunately a path that many of us take. I obviously now wish that could have been changed, but I don't regret anything. But anyway, besides all that craziness, let's get into my experience with cancer. I guess my first dealings, as far as I can remember with cancer, actually seeing someone that was dealing with it. Actually, this man was actually dying from it at the time. I was probably, man, I don't know, I was a little child. I was between 3 and 6 years old, I would imagine. And my dad's, one of his mentors, it was an older man at the time. I think my dad had, I can't recall if he had actually worked for this man or had gotten a rock off of his property. I think some of both. But anyway, I'm sure developed a relationship, and this man was dying from cancer at this point in time. I think he was at home and pretty much bedridden at this point in time. I was just a little kid. My dad went to visit, and you know how it is if you have children. You can't always find the babysitter when necessary. But anyway, I was with my father when I went to visit this man, and I guess at the time I was, young and kind of maybe a little rambunctious. I was always kind of quiet and reserved as a child and knew how to behave, unlike a lot of kids nowadays. But I don't think I was rambunctious or anything in the man's house, but I think I probably, how it is when you're a kid, man. It's just time goes on forever, and perhaps I was bored or something, or showing some apathy in the situation, which what more can you expect from a young child at that age? But anyhow, after we had left the man's house, seeing he was dying, I knew what was going on at that age. I knew that he was sick, and I'm sure my dad explained it to me later on, maybe in the vehicle. But I guess my little bit of apathy, I was disciplined for that on the ride home, rightfully so. And I'll never will forget. Like I said, I don't think I was cutting up or being a brat or anything like that. I think I might have just been showing a little apathy or, kind of bored for a child, I guess. But anyway, we discussed that in great detail, and I learned a lesson on that, but rightfully so. But anyhow, that was probably my first dealing with it. And this man, it wasn't much longer and he had passed away from cancer. But I guess from that point, other than just casual folks in our church and, hearing your parents' peers or whatnot, perhaps their parents' friends or whatnot, hearing so and so passed away from this or that, or, that's about the majority, I guess you'd say, and I didn't rediscover this until about 2 weeks ago. I was talking to my mom, but anyway, my mom was diagnosed with cancer in 1994, and as of a couple weeks ago, I could not have told you what year, how old I was, what was going on in my life, anything. I guess it was just kind of like a traumatic event that I kind of blocked out. I've got vivid clarity on a lot of events in my life and a decent memory on, meaningful things. But when it comes to a lot of traumatic events, and I mean, we all share these certain events in our life, but with a lot of the traumatic stuff that I've encountered in my life, I have zero recollection. I guess it's just a protective mechanism, a defense mechanism that my brain just discards this information, and I realize it happened, but I can't tell you in much detail. But anyway, back to when my mother was diagnosed, she was telling me the other day that she remembers that I had come home. I think it was 1994. At that time, I would have been 20 years old. I had came home. Can't remember if I came home from work or what I was doing at the time, but anyhow, she had found out, and we discovered it. She ended up having rectal cancer, and she discovered it by passing a lot of blood. And they thought it was maybe some fissures or something in her rectum, and we're kind of doing some tests and biopsies and things like that. We came back cancerous. So that was my first experience with that, and I'll get into sharing you a little bit about that. As a young man at that point in time, it impacted me pretty severely, I must say, as it would anybody. I'm not sure what would be, if there is such thing as a good or better age. I don't think there is. I think maybe if you're a child that you might not have the understanding. I don't know. When I was a little kid, I got it. Just perhaps I didn't have the same viewpoints as what I do now, but I got it. I realized that it was serious stuff and that it can be fatal and you're going to be leaving this earth. So the gravity of that as a child to as an adult, I don't think that changes. I think your perspective may change over the years, But yeah, so her diagnosis, and she went through the modern medicine route, which is, I'm trying to remember if she had, I know she had radiation chemotherapy. They had to do a colostomy on her, so I can't recall if they did surgery. I'm thinking just radiation and chemo, but I could be wrong. It's like I said, it's all a blur. I don't really recall, but what I can tell you, what I do recall, was at the time she was working full time with Kroger, which is a local grocery store in our area. Through a good portion of our country now, actually, probably out to the Midwest, and they have affiliates throughout the entire U.S. A lot of Western stores under different names. They're the same conglomerate, but anyway, insurance at that point in time probably better than what most folks have nowadays, but still yet it just kills you and you're left with a ton of unaffordable bills. Not to mention you're dealing with your employer. The illness to begin with, which is totally taxing on your body and draining physically, equally as mentally. So you have all this to contend with in normal family life. For her at that age, it would have probably been a little bit easier to handle with three adult boys grown and kind of making their way through life, so she didn't have to contend with having to explain to a child what was going on. But anyway, so that was my first dealings with an actual nucleus family member and cancer. And then how the progression from there goes, where your family member has been diagnosed and fighting it and dealing with it, and at a very young age I had a crash course in just what to expect and what takes place as far as physically, emotionally, financially, employment. I seen it all at that point in time. But she did well with it for the most part. Radiation and chemotherapy, folks, is, pardon my language here, but we're going to keep it candid and real here. It's an ass kicker. Especially the radiation. Radiation has destroyed my mother's life. And when we get into it, it's destroyed my life. And a lot of folks I know express the same sentiment. That radiation will kick your ass. I mean, it'll knock you down and beat the hell out of you. And the problems linger. I'm still dealing with radiation issues, and it's been over 12 years for myself. We'll get into that a little bit later. But let's see. Let's think here. I mean, I could talk for days upon end about my mother's ordeal, but I don't have the vivid clarity that you folks deserve from being able to speak on that on. Let's fast forward from that point in time. Let's see. That would have been 12 years. Wow, we're on this 12-year program here, gang. This is kind of weird. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. 94 to 06. 94, 04, 10, 06, 2. Yeah. 12-year cycle, man. That's kind of weird. And we'll get into more of this, too, in the future. But, so fast forward. I hired on with Norfolk Southern Railroad in February of 99. I actually started applying for the place when I just graduated, so that would have been 92. I started applying for the place. Man, I put in I don't know how many applications, went to so many hiring sessions. If anybody has been through a railroad hiring session for Norfolk Southern Corporation, you know the hell that you're put through in a whole entire day. They punish the hell out of you, and they do it for reasons. Most people aren't going to make it through the first couple hours, so that kind of weeds out the folks that they don't want to target. It's hard enough nowadays to find anybody that can tie their own shoes, much less operate multi-million-dollar equipment safely, and not to mention with the lifestyle they force upon you that shouldn't be the way it is, but that's another whole story. But so anyway, hired on with them. I was working as a conductor in I think 2005, I was selected to go to engine school. Okay, a little interruption there with the phone. But anyway, I think 2005, I can't remember. Like I said, traumatic events and my memory just don't. The 2000s are not good for me. I can't remember very much of them at all. But, so I go to engine school, and what that amounts to is I went to Atlanta for intensive training, learning on how to run a locomotive engine and how to handle a train properly. And yeah, it's kind of a crash course. You're have a lot of new material thrust upon you. A whole, I mean, where have you ever seen or talked to anyone other than obviously in the industry that's ever had any, real experience with operating this type of equipment? It's not out there unless you've done it. You haven't done it. The biggest rail buffs in the world can tell you a lot about this equipment, but they've never done it, so they don't know what they're doing. They can tell you probably more than most locomotive engineers, more about the engines as far as specs and horsepowers and piston diameters and strokes and bores and all this stuff that doesn't make a hill of beans unless you're an engineer. They think they could probably talk you in to believing that they could run one, but when you set somebody in that seat, the reality begins at that point. But anyway, aside from that, kind of getting off on these tangents, I got hired on, so we go to engine school, and I think one of the requirements for that, I know that we had to have a physical prior to going. I'm thinking that's a requirement. I know there's specific timelines in this occupation that you're required to have regular physicals. I think this was one of those times. So anyway, I think we got our physical. We went down to engine school. They do the whole gamut of the physical, including, checking your testicles and that type of thing. Come back from that, I'm training, and I think I was getting ready to get what we call in the railroad industry marked up. That means qualified and you're turned loose, ready to start running on your own. Your training's done with. You're marked up, you're finished. And when they use the term marking up, that's a term. In the railroad industry, they have a thing called boards. And extra boards is one of the things. If you're a new employee, you are on an extra board. And what that simply means is there's a specific number of jobs to be covered. Let's say there's 30 folks that have one specific job to do. And if you're on an extra board, if one of those 30 can't come to work, he calls and tells them, hey, I can't come in, I'm sick or whatever, you need a day off, whatnot. So then they call you off the extra board to go to work. At that point in time, what that translated to was out most times, every 10 hours at home, the phone was ringing. Away from home at that point in time, a lot of times you were back to work at 8. So that means the phone was ringing in 6 or 7 hours. And I know it's changed since then, but that's just how it was back then. And it wasn't right then, and it's not right now. It's just not a good way to operate the human biological complex does not function well under those strenuous circumstances of never being rested. Another story once again, but anyhow. So I think I get marked up, and I had just had a physical within the year, which I'm thinking, I could be wrong, I think we went on 2-year cycles on physicals. But anyhow, I had a supervisor come to me one day. He says, hey, Jeff, he says, I need you to go down and get a physical. I was like, no, you're crazy. I was like, I just had one. He says, well, I don't know, man. They're telling me you got to have a physical. So, it's a pain in the ass. I didn't have to, you got to take off work. You got to go down there. And then, it's just a big rigmarole. And I had just had one done. So it was not necessary. But, later on you'll find out that was a blessing in disguise. But anyhow, so what happens at this point? I go to have this physical, and we're doing the whole thing, and I'm like, come on, man, please bypass the whole feeling the nuts thing. I wasn't in the mood for that specific day. You know how it is, guys. It's not a whole lot of fun getting felt up by another man. I mean, anybody, whoever does it's no fun in that in that application. And I think most of us can agree you're not at your best when you're highly stressed. So let's just keep it at that. It's not a very pleasant experience for most guys. But anyhow, when he checks me and does everything, and then he kneels down and says, "Well, Mr. Brown," he says, "this is the point in time where it's awkward for everybody." He says, "We'll try to get through as best we can." He says, "Would you mind dropping your pants?" So I pull my pants down, and he takes his old, kind of wrinkly, white, old man hand. He did glove up, but he commences to grabbing my genitalia. He grabs my nutsack, and he starts to give it a little bit of a squeeze. Well, I will never forget this look on a human being's life as long as I live. He looked up at me, and he looked like he had just seen the most horrific thing that he had ever seen in his life. It's like he's seen a ghost. He looked up at me, his eyes were dilated, he didn't know what to say. Just sheer terror on his face. He jumps up immediately, opens the door, proceeds to run out of the room, is getting ready to close the door. At this point, he hasn't said a word to me. He shuts the door. Here I am, standing with my pants down, looking at a man that looks like he just saw a ghost, and I don't know what. Of course, I'm flooded with a lot of things going through my head. I pretty much knew what was going on, but he busts back in the door and he says, "Hey," he says, "if I can get you an appointment, will you go?" And I had no idea what he was talking about. Well, I did, but you know how it is. He didn't tell me. I said, "Yes." He says, "Okay," and shut the door. Well, it would seem like an eternity, which was probably more aligned with this 5 to 7 minute period of time. I'm sitting in that room, and my whole life just changed in one fraction of a second. Everything changed. There was the uncertainty was like I've never encountered before in my life. At this point, I still didn't know what was going on, but I had an idea. So anyhow, what seemed like an eternity, he comes back in and he says, "Mr. Brown, I have you an appointment to go see so-and-so at such and such urology at," I can't remember what time, but it was like a couple hours from that point in time. And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'll go." I was like, "What do you think's going on?" He says, "Well," he says, "I'm not sure, but," he says, "I'm feeling something in your testicle that's not normal." And he says it might be, well, he says he never would really say anything. He said, he says, "You just need to get checked out." I don't even think he said it could be cancer. Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. But in that instant, time just stopped. It froze. You got a multitude of thoughts and ideas coursing through your mind. And let's fast forward. It was uncertainty and question and thoughts and emotion going on at this point in time. So I go to the urologist. And he examines me, and once he examines me, he's the one, I guess he's seen it time and time again. He's the one that actually, he says, "I've seen enough of this." He says, "I know what it is." And I can't remember the exact type. It's just some sort of sarcoma, excuse me. Such and such, blah, 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 carcinoma is probably what you have. We need to get you, had some tests done. I said, so, trying to think of exactly how he broke it to me at the moment. when he was telling me, and this man is probably one of the best doctors I think I've ever met. Very, very friendly man. Yeah, his name, I don't know if I should be saying names or anything, but his name's Dr. Schmidt, and he practices in Roanoke, Virginia. But he's a urologist, and he was just like the best ever. I don't think another individual could have given me this news any more professionally or openly. It wasn't like a diagnosis you received from a doctor. He was professional beyond belief, but he also connected with me on a human level that I've never seen very many doctors were able to do so. It was like, it's like your best friend telling you something serious, or like your dad or somebody. But it vividly, I can remember with the utmost clarity, he was probably as equally disturbed as I was at the time. I did get emotional. I'll be the first to admit that, as did he. He says, Jeff, he's like, I'm thinking we're probably catching this early. He says, I'm not going to keep anything from you. He says, this is one of the fastest spreading cancers that it is. He says, if we catch it early, though, it's highly curable. So this is what I leave his office knowing. So think my next, if I'm remembering correctly, my next step was to go and have a sonogram done at an imaging center in our area. Keep in mind, folks, at this point in time, the insurance with the railroad was fantastic. It has since declined since this period of time, and nowadays it's nowhere near what it once was, as most of all the other insurances and benefits in our country, sadly. But that, I'm very fortunate at that period of time that I had the excellent coverage that I did, because an illness like this, it can destroy a wealthy man. And I was not going to say a young man at the time, but let's say early 30s. Got a little couple around maybe halfway to first base at this time in your life. We're fresh into a home, trying to pay for this and doing the dream thing, and you know how all this is. You can't afford to hardly live anymore. Just to live a menial existence in this country nowadays, it takes two working beyond full-time hours. And like I said, one illness, you're done. It's lights out. You're finished. Close up shop. You're done. Because I don't care who you are. Very few people can recover from one illness throughout their life financially. But anyway, at the time I did have decent insurance, which I'm blessed to have had. But so the next step is we go to the imaging center, and this was an experience all itself. I have a woman come in, a nice looking gal, probably around my age. Came in and had a towel wrapped up I can't remember if it was a small hand towel or a large washcloth like deal. But anyway, it was rolled up, and she might have had a piece of tape around it to hold it together. But she says, place this up under your genitals and put this towel over you, and let me know when you're done. I'll be back. And can't remember if I asked her if she kind of explained I think I asked her, so what exactly will you be doing? And she says, you see this wand here, and I'll administer this jelly, and we'll check to see what's going on. So I commenced to roll the towel up and put it under my sack and put the towel over my midsection and lay back and told her I was ready, and she came in. And I mean, she's obviously utmost professional. Still, yet it's highly embarrassing. But anyway, she came back in and did the sonogram. And obviously, when these people do this stuff all day, every day, they know exactly what they're looking at. And as crazy as everybody is nowadays with the laws and liabilities and stuff like this, I mean, she knew good and well what it was, and I could tell by the look in her eyes what it was. I mean, there's no hiding that look when another human looks into your soul. There's no escaping it. You know exactly what it means. I think they say 80 to 90% of our human communication is nonverbal, and that's positively true. But the way she looked at me, I could tell. So I said, well, what's the news? Am I going to die? Just jokingly, you know. She's like, well, I don't know. I was like, come on now. I know you know what's going on. She's like, honey, she says, a doctor has to read this. We were not able to say anything one way or the other. So I said, okay. So anyway, I got to thinking, and I got a friend of mine in town that's a surgeon. We're actually hunting buddies. But I asked the people, I said, man, do you think I can get a copy of the scan here? And she says, yeah. So she sent me home with some films. And when I get out of there, when I get out in the truck, I pull the film out and I look into it. And I'm like, man, that ain't good. It wasn't like a nodule. I've read a lot about the diagnosis of testicular cancer. It wasn't like a nodule. It was... A lot of times folks, when they're diagnosed, they'll say they feel like a pea-sized nodule on the side of their testicle. Not the case with me. The cancer had consumed most of the testicle, so it wasn't any different in size or shape. It was simply more dense than the cancer-free testicle. Because when I got home, and I was never one to really. It's a very sensitive area on a man, and I never was really one, other than normal bathing and cleaning, to really ever even touch them for that matter. I don't. Some guys sit around and play with themselves all the time, but I was never that dude. I would clean myself properly when I bathed, showered, or whatnot, but as far as getting any pleasure from touching that part of my body or having someone else do it was never been a pleasuring experience. It was always a very highly sensitive, just too much to handle, really. Just very highly sensitive. But so I never sat around feeling my nuts or nothing, but I did I'd feel them when I bathed, but I never felt anything out of the ordinary. They were always the same size, and no nodules. But like I said, when I was diagnosed, it felt, the one with the cancer in it was just simply more dense. It's like if you feel it'd be like if you felt a super ripe peach getting ready to go bad, as opposed to feeling one that's, just started growing real dense and hard. That's that type of difference. So anyway, I take the films, call my surgeon buddy. I said, hey man, because I think I talked to him the night before or something. He told me to get the films and bring them by his office, and he would, because how everything takes a little while. The couple of days, when you're expecting to have an answer or some clarity, a couple of days could seem like an eternity. And he told me that if I got the films, he could expedite this for me and read them and tell me what it is. Being the buddy thing. So I did, and we went to his office one night. I think it was myself and my wife, and he puts it up on his lit board there and looks at it, and he says, yeah, he says, it's cancer. And yeah, probably one of the single toughest things I've ever dealt with in my life was getting that news. You don't know how to react. You don't know if it's metastasized to your body at this point. You don't know if could be this or that or whatever. So you just don't know what to expect. And then from that moment when you are diagnosed, the remainder of your life has been altered forever. You will never be that same person you were the day before you were diagnosed or moments before you were diagnosed. That person's gone. You will never have a moment in your life after you've been diagnosed with cancer that you'll never have another moment to where that you can actually be comfortable about not having it or not thinking about it or, hey, is this going to return, or this is something that will plague you. And I think it's just a human condition. I mean, I think I deal with it pretty well. I don't try not to dwell on it, although every day it's a concern. You wonder, hey, is it coming back? Is today the day? But it's just one of those questions you'll have it for the remainder of your life. I've been in remission now for, I guess, 11 years as far as the cancer goes. And yeah, when you're given that diagnosis, it's let's just say things change and you start viewing things differently. I know for me, important things in my life became certainly more precious and meaningful. The small stuff that would, maybe worry or plague most of us, that doesn't become as it's not that big of a deal anymore, quite frankly. When you're looking at looking at dying, perhaps, it's coming to terms with that. Something that, I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm a follower of Christ, and I have been since I was a young child. I had experiences in my young life where I felt the presence of God, and I knew He was in my life, and there's no question in it. And I've had many, 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 many experiences along the way that's given me the utmost clarity where I will never question that. No matter what happens in life, there will never be a question for me. I know. But that's for another talk. So anyway, I guess what we've covered is just a little bit of my journey.